When the coffin lid was lifted, no one could believe their eyes. Beneath the rotting wooden casket was the skeleton of a woman, no burial shroud. No name, but the eyes, still wide open, staring blankly, as if they had never closed. And each time someone spoke the name of the woman supposedly buried above, a thick, ink-like fluid seeped from the sockets of the skull below. One death, two coffins. The body underneath had gone nameless for over a decade. But the most haunting thing wasn't her eyes. It was the question no one dared to speak aloud. Who truly belonged in that grave? And why didn't the one beneath even have a name? Steady your breath, because every part of this story may send chills down your spine, not out of fear, but from a sorrow too heavy to ignore. Nathan had been in the exhumation trade for over 10 years. He'd worked in cemeteries across regions, small villages, big towns, digging through everything from dry earth to waterlogged clay. The longer he worked, the more he realized death wasn't frightening. What truly scared him were the words people never said before it was too late. One humid afternoon, he received a call from an old man named Harris. The man's voice shook on the line. "Sir, do you still do reburials? My wife passed a long time ago. I want to give her a proper ceremony. Lately, I keep dreaming of her, sitting at the edge of my bed, just smiling. But her smile, it chills me to the bone." "How long has she been gone?" Nathan asked. "Over 12 years, the man whispered. But back then, we rushed the burial. The kids did it at night. I was too sick to attend. Ever since then, something hasn't felt right." There was hesitation in his voice, something hidden, but Nathan didn't press. He agreed. 2 days later, he set off with his 5-man team. The grave was located on a hilltop near a dense cajeput forest. The wind there always carried a bitter, earthy scent. Locals used to call it Whispering Hill. As they reached the cemetery, Ben, the youngest on the team, known for his sarcasm, looked around and muttered, "Creepy place, like something out of a Korean horror movie. If I had to walk through here at night, I'd piss myself." Mr. Harris gave a forced smile and guided them to the grave. It was a small, low tomb made of concrete, covered with mossy green stones. The headstone was old and worn, its letters barely legible. "They buried her in a hurry," Harris mumbled. "There was a storm. I was bedridden, couldn't be there." Nathan stood quietly, staring down at the plot, a strange chill crawling up his spine. As the team dug deeper, the soil changed. It became oddly soft, fragrant, as if someone had buried roots of some kind beneath it. They performed a basic ritual, lit incense, scattered salt and rice, and began to dig. An hour later, as the shovel struck the edge of the coffin, Leo, the strongest member, froze in place. "Wait, Nathan, there's something strange. Looks like 2 layers of wood." Nathan leaned in, brushed away more dirt. Sure enough, beneath the outer casket was another wooden box, half decayed, its lid slightly ajar. Ben gasped. 2 coffins? What the hell? Did we bury someone else in there? Nathan frowned, turning to Harris. "Did you know about this?" The old man paled. No idea. Maybe the kids made a mistake." Nathan didn't say another word. He motioned for the team to stop. They recovered the hole with soil and waited until morning to perform a proper ceremony. That night, they stayed at Mr. Harris' house. The wind from the forest howled through the thin walls. Leo, sleeping near the door, heard shuffling outside, like dragging slippers circling the yard. He sat up, flashed a light. No one was there. Just before dawn, Ben suddenly sat up, pale as a sheet. Nathan awoke with a start. "What's wrong?" he asked. Ben's voice trembled. "I had a dream. There was a woman in a long white dress. Her hair covered her face. She was curled up in a dark underground room. I couldn't see her face. She didn't move, but she cried, quietly. The tears pooled around her feet." Leo added, "I had the same dream. But in mine, she didn't cry. She held her belly, and kept mumbling something, like she was calling for someone." Nathan looked at both of them, then stepped outside. The sky was still dark. The cold morning air hit his chest like ice. The bitter scent of the forest crept through the wind, and in the back of his mind, Harris' words repeated. They buried her at night. I wasn't there, and I've felt this guilt ever since. Guilt? For what? Nathan sat on the front step, lit a cigarette. His hands trembled slightly. He knew this wasn't just a burial. And the woman beneath that second coffin, she wasn't going to rest easy. The next morning, just as the sun peeked over the treetops, Nathan and his crew were already back at the grave. The old man sat on a plastic chair nearby, gripping a bundle of incense sticks, his hands visibly trembling. Ben muttered under his breath, "It's not even hot yet. And the guy's sweating like a fountain." Nathan didn't reply. He quietly set up the offering, 3 cups of water, 3 cups of rice wine, a boiled chicken, and 3 incense sticks placed carefully into the soil in front of the grave. He bowed and prayed, "Today, we, the living, humble in flesh and soul, come to perform this reburial for the departed. If any spirit remains here in unrest, show yourself in dreams, let go of any grievance, and allow the living to complete what was left unfinished." He took a deep breath and gave the signal to begin digging. The crew worked cautiously, every motion deliberate. Within minutes, the second coffin fully emerged. The wood was nearly gone, the lid sagging and dark. Leo nudged one side and pried up a plank. Everyone froze. Inside was a small, crooked skeleton, no shroud, no burial cloth, no casket lining, just torn pieces of what looked like an old work blouse. But the most horrifying part, the eyes. The eyeballs were still intact, cloudy white, bulging like fish eyes, wide open, staring straight at the tomb's ceiling. The mouth hung open, jaw twisted, as if mid-scream, though no sound could ever come out. Ben staggered backward. "Nathan, how can a corpse still have eyes?" Nathan's voice was low. "Quiet, don't ask anything. We'll hold a separate ceremony later." Leo leaned closer and muttered, "Why is she crooked? Like someone tossed her in, not a real burial." Nathan lit another incense stick. His hand trembled as he placed it. Then he looked again, closer this time, and saw something that made his blood run cold. A small bone nestled near the ribs. It was tiny, about the size of a newborn's wrist. No one said a word. No one dared to speak what they were all thinking. From behind them, the old man suddenly dropped to his knees and crawled closer, muttering in shock, "No, that can't be. Why is she still there? I thought it was done." Nathan turned toward him. "You need to explain. Who is she? Why is she buried beneath your wife?" The old man stammered, "I don't know. I swear, I don't know." And then the wind howled. A sharp gust blew through the trees like a scream. The incense in Nathan's hand suddenly flared bright, then extinguished right in the middle, both ends glowing red like open wounds. No one moved. Then the old man screamed, "I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. Don't look at me like that." He raised his hands to cover his eyes, curling up like a man shielding himself from something just over his shoulder. Nathan grabbed him by the arms. Who's looking at you? What did you see?" The old man shook violently, pointing a trembling finger at the open casket. "Those eyes, they've been staring at me for 12 years, every night. She never speaks, she just looks." Ben gasped and pointed. "Nathan, look, the water." Nathan turned. From the skeleton's eye sockets, thick black fluid was slowly trickling down the cheekbones. Across the collarbone, the ground beneath had gone soft. The smell faintly sour, like roots rotting in swamp water. No one could speak, but everyone understood. This woman had not been laid to rest. She had been silenced. Nathan turned to the old man. "Who is she? If you don't speak now, your descendants will pay for your silence." The old man dropped his gaze. His voice broke. "She was someone I once knew. But she wasn't my wife." Nathan cut in, firm. "You weren't married to her? Then why bury her with your wife?" The old man collapsed, sobbing into the dirt. Nathan turned to the others. Stop everything. Separate the remains of the one we came for. This one needs a different kind of burial. Don't touch anything until we know the truth. That night, the crew sat behind the house, eating quietly under the flickering light of the kitchen bulb. Ben broke the silence. Why do we always end up in the creepy ones? Grave digging with ghosts. Leo shot him a look. Shut up. In our line of work, if weird things didn't happen, that would be weird. Nathan said nothing, his eyes fixed on the yard outside. Then, softly, did anyone else see a yellow light in the trees? Ben straightened. What? There's no electricity out here. Nathan stood slowly and looked out toward the forest. A faint yellow glow hovered beyond the tree line, flickering like an old oil lamp, blinking in and out of the shadows. They stepped outside to look, but it was gone. Just the sound of the wind, long and low, like grief humming through the branches. Nathan stepped back in and said, voice heavy, that wasn't a light, that was a warning. This isn't over yet. The next morning, a light drizzle soaked the trees. The forest was damp and cold, the scent of wet earth thick in the air. The entire crew sat quietly under the awning of the old man's house, sipping hot tea in silence. Leo wiped down his bone chisel with a cloth, murmuring, we've dug up over 100 graves, but I've never seen anything like this. Eyes still there, water leaking from the skull. It's haunting. Ben added, Nathan, do you really think it's possible that the dead can still cry? Nathan looked up slowly and replied, I do, not because of tears, but because the living still refuse to speak the truth. And the dead have no choice but to endure the silence. This isn't something ordinary. The old man stepped out from inside, holding a torn piece of green fabric in his hand. His eyes were vacant, distant. Nathan stood and went straight to the point. Tell us, who's buried beneath your wife? Why was she there? The old man sat slowly into a wooden chair, quiet for a long time, then said softly, her name was Lily. She lived with me back then. We weren't married, no paperwork. Times were hard. I couldn't legally marry two women, but I couldn't leave either of them. Ben frowned. So, she was like a mistress? The old man's voice rose for the first time. There was no wife or mistress. She loved me, that's all. I just couldn't give her a name. Leo sighed. Tell the truth, when she died, were you the one who buried her there? He said nothing. Nathan leaned in, voice sharper. No burial cloth, no coffin, no name, no offering. You buried her in secret, under your wife's grave. And you thought she could ever rest in peace? Tears welled in the old man's eyes. I was afraid. I didn't want my wife to find out. I asked my cousins to help. We buried her quickly. They said it would be near the family plot. But they dug deeper without telling me. I never knew until now. Ben muttered, you buried two people in one grave? No ceremony. No separation. Did anyone else know? I said nothing. The old man whispered, since the day she died, I've dreamed of her, eyes wide open, asking me, why won't you say my name? But I couldn't. Leo looked over. Did you know she was pregnant? The old man blinked, stunned. What? No, I didn't know. Nathan said calmly. There was a tiny bone in the grave, about the size of an infant's wrist. She didn't die alone. The room fell silent, save for the gentle tapping of rain on the metal roof. The old man trembled. So she didn't hate me, she just hated dying without ever becoming a mother? Nathan nodded. Maybe, or maybe she hated dying without a name. No one remembered her, no family, no tombstone. She died and was buried beneath someone else's identity. Leo asked softly, do you still remember her name? The old man nodded slowly. Her name was Lily Evans. But she had no ID. That's just what she told me. Ben sat still, voice low. No family, no documents, no grave, just those eyes, still open, like they're begging to be named again. That afternoon, Nathan prepared a small ritual at the side of the lower coffin. But this time, he didn't mention the wife. He bowed and whispered, whoever you are, if you are Lily Evans, We now return your name. May your soul finally find peace." Right then, although the drizzle continued, the rain suddenly paused. A ray of sunlight pierced the clouds and shined directly onto the grave. The incense at the center burned clean and steady, unlike the past 2 days. Ben whispered. She accepted it. Nathan nodded slightly, but deep down, something still gnawed at him. She had taken her name back, but the injustice still lingered. The unborn child, those wide, staring eyes, were they finally at peace? That evening, as the team packed up behind the kitchen, Leo leaned in and asked, "Nathan, aren't you scared?" Nathan glanced at him. "Scared of what?" Leo shrugged. "You know, ghosts." Nathan smiled faintly. "I'm not afraid of ghosts. I'm afraid of the living, doing cruel things and then sleeping soundly. Eating well, living peacefully, while the dead lie cold, buried in silence, with no one even remembering their name." Night fell quickly after the naming ritual. Gusts of wind from the forest slammed against the old man's tin roof, forcing the entire crew to huddle around the charcoal stove in the small kitchen. No one said much. Each man sat with a cup of lukewarm tea, as if they were trying to process something too heavy for words. Ben was the first to speak, but even his tone was muted, stripped of its usual edge. "Nathan, when you said her name earlier, it felt like something grabbed my throat. Out of nowhere, I remembered something from when I was a kid, like someone forced me to recall it." Leo looked over. "What did you remember?" Ben rubbed his hands together, more for comfort than warmth. "When I was really young, maybe 3 or 4, my family rented a place near an old cemetery. One night, while I was asleep, I heard someone whisper my name right into my ear. It was soft but freezing. When I looked toward the door, I saw a woman in a long white dress, sitting on the steps, hugging her knees. I couldn't see her face. I always thought it was just a dream, but I've never forgotten her eyes." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Nathan placed his cup on the table and stared at Ben. "And you're just telling us this now?" Ben's voice shook slightly. "I really thought it was a dream. But after today, that figure looked exactly like the woman in the grave." Leo spoke slowly. "I had a dream too. She was standing in the middle of an empty field, hair covering her face, dressed in white, holding her belly. She didn't speak, but when I turned to walk away, she whispered, 'Give me back my name.' Her voice, it was like wind tearing through my ear." Nathan stood and walked to the door, staring out into the mist-filled yard. "Has anyone here been to that cemetery before?" he asked. Ben shook his head. Leo did the same. Nathan's voice dropped into something softer, almost like he was talking to himself. "I have. My first year doing this work. Right here on this hill. I accidentally exhumed someone too early. That night, I dreamed about her, sitting at the foot of my bed. She wasn't angry. She wasn't crying. She just asked, 'Why did you take me before calling my name?' Since then, I've made it a rule, every grave I touch, I speak the name, no matter what. The dead may lose everything else, but their name is the last thing they cling to." Suddenly, the old man entered the room, looking drained and distant. His eyes were sunken. It looked like he hadn't slept in days. He sat by the stove and spoke like someone trapped between the past and present. "At noon today," he said, "when Nathan spoke her name, I heard a voice whisper into my ear, 'You finally called me.' It was a woman's voice. Soft, but clear. I turned around, and no one was there." Ben shuddered. "Why is it that everyone hears something, sees something, but no one says a word?" The old man pressed his lips together. "Who would believe me? For over 10 years, I've dreamed of her, every night. Sometimes she was sitting, sometimes walking backward, sometimes curled up in the rain, holding her stomach, but she never spoke, not once, until yesterday." Leo nodded slowly. "I don't think she's angry. I think she just doesn't want to be forgotten." Nathan turned back to them. His voice was steady now. "She wanted a name, a grave of her own, a place to be remembered, not hidden beneath someone else, not confused with someone she never was." Ben hesitated. So, are we going to separate the graves? Nathan nodded. Sooner or later, we have to. That night, they all went to bed with heavy hearts. Around midnight, the rain came down in sheets. Ben tossed and turned, then shot awake. In that blurry moment between sleep and waking, he saw the window beside his bed was wide open. Wind howled through, bringing in the bitter scent of rotting leaves. He sat up to close it, and saw a woman standing in the garden. Back to him, hair flowing down her back, her white dress rippling in the storm. She didn't move. Ben froze. He didn't scream, didn't speak. She just stood there, and then faded slowly into the night like she was never there at all. The next morning, the sun rose late. The sky was thick with gray. Nathan was already awake, brewing tea, sitting on the porch, waiting for the old man. When the old man stepped outside, they sat in silence for a long while. Finally, the old man said, "You were right. I can't leave her buried beneath someone else anymore. I'll call the family and ask permission to move the remains." Nathan looked up. "And if they say no?" The old man paused, then quietly said, "Then I'll sell this land. I'll use the money to give her a proper grave. I should have done it long ago. At my age, I don't want her calling to me in my dreams anymore." Nathan didn't reply. He simply poured the tea and pushed a cup toward him. But in his heart, Nathan knew this wasn't just about bones. This was an apology, a confession, 13 years too late. And maybe, just maybe, it would take a lifetime to make it right. That afternoon, sunlight broke through the clouds. The crew returned to the grave one final time to prepare for separating the two sets of remains. Nathan gave clear directions. The wife's bones would be reburied at the family cemetery on the western side of the village. But the other woman, the one who had no name, no documents, no voice, she would be moved to the edge of the hill, where a quiet piece of land overlooked a small stream. Locals once said they'd seen her sitting there alone, humming softly to herself. The old man agreed without hesitation. "It's open, peaceful, no other graves nearby. She would have liked that." Nathan led the team to the site, marked the boundaries carefully, measured every corner, then returned to prepare a ritual to help her spirit move on before relocating the remains. That night, the offering was placed in the center of the yard. 3 incense sticks, a white rooster, a plate of sticky rice, a bowl of water, salt and dry grains. Nathan sat cross-legged and prayed silently. "Lily, tonight we offer this ceremony to release you to a place that is finally your own. You will no longer rest beneath someone else's name. If there's still injustice in your soul, let it be seen in dreams. Don't carry it any longer." He lit the incense and placed the 3 sticks gently into a new burner. The 2 outer sticks burned perfectly. The center stick ignited, then suddenly went out. Ben flinched. "Try again." Nathan relit it. The second time, it burned halfway, then faded as if someone had blown it out. Leo watched closely. "Maybe she's not ready." Nathan shook his head. "She's not refusing. She's waiting." Ben whispered. "Waiting for what?" Nathan didn't answer right away. He walked around the perimeter of the yard slowly, then returned and looked the old man in the eye. "How did she die?" The old man hesitated. "She was sick, stomach pain for months. We didn't have money for treatment." Nathan's voice was steady. "Are you sure it wasn't poison? Abuse? Suicide?" The old man's face went white. His lips trembled. I don't know." Ben spoke softly. "I have a feeling her death wasn't that simple. People don't die from illness and leave eyes like that behind." Leo added, "If all she wanted was a proper grave, the incense would have burned yesterday." Nathan nodded. "She's waiting for someone else. Or the truth." Suddenly, the old man stood and shouted, "I didn't kill her. I never touched her. I just left her. She was in pain. And I ran. I went to my other home. And when I came back, she was curled up in front of the kitchen. Already gone." The wind outside paused. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Nathan said quietly, "Sometimes, doing nothing is already a kind of cruelty." Ben poured another cup of tea without a word. Leo disappeared into the house and returned with a small cloth bundle. "Nathan, take a look at this." Inside was a piece of torn moss green fabric, its edges frayed with faded lace. It looked like it had once been part of a woman's sleeve. Leo explained, "I found it beneath the trees, right near where we're going to bury her. I don't know if it's hers." Nathan picked it up. It still smelled faintly of damp earth, like it had been buried for years. He placed it carefully on the makeshift altar and whispered again, "If this was yours, please accept it. And if there's still something left unspoken, show us." The three of them watched the incense once more. This time, the center stick burned evenly. But the flame split in two. Ben gasped, "What the hell? Why two flames?" Leo said slowly, "Maybe she didn't die alone." No one responded, but they all knew the truth in their hearts. That night, they all slept on the wooden floor. The wind outside groaned through the trees. Nathan lay on his side, eyes wide open, not daring to sleep. Around 2 a.m., somewhere between consciousness and dream, he heard it, a whisper, soft but sharp, right next to his ear. "Don't leave my child behind." He shot upright, covered in sweat, but he told no one. The next morning, Nathan quietly prepared a second offering: a white cloth, a bowl of clean water, and a small handmade fabric doll. He placed it beside the new grave. He didn't explain, he only murmured, "For the one who never got to be born." The old man stood behind him, silent. His eyes were red and swollen. He didn't apologize. He didn't speak. He only bowed his head and slipped a folded note into Nathan's hand. A name, shaky handwriting, Evelyn Grace. If it had been a girl, that was the name I had in mind. But I never got the chance. Nathan held the note tightly, folded it carefully, and burned it in a small clay bowl beside the incense. The ashes rose slowly, drifting like a final sigh after years of silence. This time, the center incense burned all the way through. That noon, the sun blazed down, sharp and relentless. After the incense had burned clean and the ritual was complete, Nathan took Leo and Ben to a small house at the edge of the village. The roof was old, covered in moss. The red brick walls were cracked with age, and hanging flower pots under the eaves had long dried into brittle silence. Nathan knocked gently, without raising his voice. A raspy voice came from inside. "Who's there?" He replied softly, "It's Nathan. You used to watch over the cemetery near the Whispering Hill. Do you remember?" Footsteps shuffled inside. The door creaked open. A frail old woman stood in the doorway, her back bent, her hair white as smoke, her face mapped with deep lines of time. She stared at Nathan for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "Come in. I knew you were coming." Ben whispered under his breath. "Wait, we haven't said anything." "How does she know?" She didn't answer. Instead, she moved carefully inside, one hand gliding along the wooden wall for support. The house smelled of incense and herbal medicine. She pointed at a rickety wooden chair. "Sit. Ask what you need. My strength doesn't last long." Nathan poured her a cup of tea and slid it across the table. "I want to ask about someone. Her name was Lily. She once lived around here. Do you remember her?" The woman closed her eyes and nodded. "I remember. She was gentle, beautiful. Her eyes always looked like they were holding back tears. She came here for love. No family, no papers, but she lived with dignity." Leo asked quietly, "How did she die?" The woman opened her eyes, slow and steady, like drawing water from an old, dry well. "She starved. That's it." Ben froze. "She what? Starved?" She nodded. "When she got pregnant, he left. She stayed alone in a broken-down shack by the forest. No one took her in. Her belly was big. She had no rice, no milk. When the labor pain came, she cried out all afternoon. But no one came." Nathan's hands tightened into fists. "No one heard her?" Her smile was thin and bitter. "They heard. I lived nearby, but people were afraid. They said she was crazy, that her child was cursed. Some even whispered she was possessed. I had a handful of rice in my hand, ready to bring it to her. But when I got to the door, she was already gone. Silence sank over the room. She went on. I didn't tell anyone. I buried her myself. Alone. No sheet. No ceremony. I just placed a shirt over her face. When I covered her with dirt, her eyes were still open and staring right at me. Ben's voice cracked. Then how did she end up under the other grave? The old woman furrowed her brow. I didn't bury her there. I laid her near the edge of the forest, 10 meters away. Maybe later someone dug up the graves, mixed the bones, and filled in a different spot. Nathan took a long breath, then asked, "Have you ever seen her again?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I lost sight in one eye because of her." All three men turned toward her. Startled, she explained, "When I was 60, one night I heard knocking. I opened the door, and there she was. Pale, pregnant, holding a tiny shirt in her arms. I panicked and slammed the door shut. The next morning, I couldn't see out of my right eye." Nathan asked softly, "Did she say anything?" The woman nodded. "Just one sentence. Give me a name." Ben whispered. That same sentence again. Leo added, "And a name for her child too." The woman exhaled, slowly. "If you really want to help, don't let her be forgotten again." On the way back, Ben sat silently on the back of the bike. As they neared the turn by the forest, he asked, "Nathan, do you think she'll forgive?" Nathan didn't answer right away. Then, in a quiet voice, he said, "The hardest kind of forgiveness is when someone never got to feel truly loved." Leo joined in, "But we're doing the right thing now, aren't we?" Nathan nodded slightly. "It's right, yes, but being right isn't enough. It needs respect too." The team returned to the temporary grave. Nathan carried a small stone marker he had carved by hand. On it, he had etched these words: "She once lived, and waited to be called by name. A life that never got to be born." Before setting the stone in place, Nathan lit incense and whispered, "Today, we don't just call your name. We carve it into stone, so no one can ever erase it again." A soft breeze passed through the trees. Leaves floated down like blessings. A shaft of sunlight pierced the canopy and fell directly on the new stone. Ben looked at Leo and gave a faint smile. "Maybe she's watching," Leo answered softly, "and maybe her eyes have finally closed." Autumn had just begun. The cajeput leaves were falling more often, gliding low in the breeze. That morning, no one said a word, but the entire team woke up early on their own. Ben brewed tea. Leo swept the yard. Nathan sat in silence, sharpening the edge of a small stone plaque. Then carefully wiped each carved letter with a damp cloth, as if brushing off decades of silence from a name that had never truly been spoken. The old man stood quietly under the porch. He wore an old, faded shirt and held a small folded piece of paper in his hand. He hadn't slept. His eyes were red and hollow, like someone who had relived an entire lifetime in just one night. Nathan turned, gently resting a hand on the man's shoulder. "Today, say it out loud. No more whispering to the wind." The old man nodded, but his legs trembled, as if they might give out beneath him. When they reached the new grave, he said nothing at first. He crouched down and stared at the fresh stone, reading every letter like a sentence passed. One name, then another. He let out a bitter smile. "There was a time I thought of naming my child Evelyn Grace. But if I didn't have the courage to stay with her mother, what right did I have to name her child?" The air around them felt thin, like fog. The forest stood still. No wind, no birdsong, only the dry crunch of fallen leaves beneath the feet of the living as they circled the final resting place of someone long forgotten. Nathan lit the incense and planted the sticks into the earth. Leo and Ben stepped back, giving the old man space to come forward. He knelt. No tears came. He was dry, like a man who'd run out of sorrow long ago. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a faded piece of green cloth, the same sleeve Leo had once found, and laid it gently before the headstone. Then he spoke, Quietly, but clearly. "Lily, it's me. I've come to call your name. It's been over 10 years, but I still hope you can hear me." No one responded. No wind moved, but each man standing there felt their chest tighten. He went on, "I'm sorry. Back then, I was afraid. Afraid of my wife. Afraid of gossip. Afraid of shame. Afraid of everything but losing you. And when I did lose you, I learned the only thing I'd truly held onto was my own cowardice." Ben turned away, wiping a tear. Leo stood still, his fists clenched. Nathan bowed his head low, silently echoing the old man's words in prayer. The voice continued, "I never married you. I didn't give you a proper burial. I didn't protect our child. I didn't even say your name, ever. Not once, fully. But today, before the sky, before this stone, I call you, Lily Evans." There was silence. Then, gently, the wind returned. A breeze lifted the edge of the old man's shirt. The incense flared bright red and burned upward, clean and unwavering. Nathan whispered. She heard. The old man pressed his palms together and bowed low, 3 times, his forehead to the ground. His voice cracked. "Lily, forgive me, and if there is another life, please don't love me again. I was never worthy." The wind swept through the trees, carrying a few wildflower petals across the headstone, letting them fall beside the smaller line below, Evelyn Grace. Nathan placed a bouquet of white blooms at the base of the grave. Leo brought out a new fabric doll tied with a soft pink ribbon and placed it beside the stone. Ben lit another stick of incense and murmured, "Miss Lily, your child is no longer nameless." The old man remained kneeling. After a long pause, he lifted his head, not looking at anyone in particular, and said softly, "I want to stay here this afternoon. Let me sit with her a while longer." Nathan nodded. "We'll go ahead. Call us if you need anything." As the team rode back toward the village crossroads, Ben turned from the backseat and asked, unsure if what he felt was peace or sadness, "Nathan, do you think she forgave him?" Nathan didn't hesitate. "She's no longer angry. But forgiveness doesn't come just because we ask. It comes only when they're ready to give it." Leo added quietly, "Sometimes, being remembered matters more than being forgiven." Nathan nodded. "Yes, to be remembered, to be called by name, that alone is warmth enough for the dead." That evening, the team sat in the kitchen, sharing tea in silence. No ghost stories, no jokes. Leo flipped quietly through his notebook, scribbling a few soft lines. Ben sat drawing, a pair of eyes, this time peacefully closed. Nathan gazed out the window at the dark forest. But it no longer felt cold, no longer menacing. He spoke softly, almost to himself. "Tomorrow, we go back to the grave one last time. Seal it, cement it, lock the past in peace." Leo asked, "And then we leave for good?" Nathan nodded. "Yes, but this time, we leave without carrying anything." Ben smiled faintly. "No, we're taking something. We're taking back a name that finally came home." Everyone smiled gently, lightly. The wind passed through the shutters once again. The scent of cajeput leaves drifted in. Not cold anymore, just calm. The next morning, soft sunlight returned. Thin white clouds drifted lazily over the hilltops, as if holding on to the last chill of the fading season. Nathan had been awake for hours, standing quietly on the porch, incense bundle in hand, his gaze locked toward the direction of the stream. Today would be the last time, sealing the grave, setting the stone, placing the final flower, and walking away. Ben emerged with a long yawn, but no jokes today. Leo didn't speak either. He simply carried out a jug of water, set it down, and sat quietly beside it. Nathan turned to both of them. "We finish it today. Do it right. No shortcuts." Ben nodded. Leo asked, barely above a whisper, "Will you stop by the stream?" Nathan paused, then answered softly, "Yes." The 3 of them walked up the hill together. The ground was soft beneath their feet, blanketed in leaves. Fresh blades of grass had begun to grow in patches, new life taking root after the reburial. The grave stood at the edge of the hill, overlooking a clear stream. Its water flowed silently across moss-covered stones, the surface shimmering with morning light. The grave was simple. White stone borders surrounded it. A smooth layer of cement sealed it. The gray headstone bore 2 quiet lines. She once lived, and waited to be called by name. A life that never had the chance to grow. Nathan laid down the new incense bundle. He sat beside the grave, not bowing, not praying, just watching the stone. It's finished now. Lily, you have your name, you have your place. Someone will come once a year to call it out loud. And here, you have the wind, the stream, the rustling trees, just like the days you used to hum to yourself under their shade. Ben stepped forward, placing a pot of white flowers beside the marker. He whispered, "We're leaving now. Thank you for showing us how much it matters to be named." Leo pulled a repaired strand of dark wooden prayer beads from his pocket, the one he'd fixed where it had snapped, and placed it beside the stone. "This is for you. It's quiet here, but peaceful. And if someone ever visits, remember to smile." The 3 of them stood. As they turned to go, a breeze rolled through the trees. A white ribbon, once tied to a nearby branch, slipped loose. It danced once through the air before drifting down, landing gently at Nathan's feet. He picked it up, smiled faintly. "Yes, we remember." They descended the hill in silence. When they passed the stream, Nathan paused, sitting down on a wide flat rock near the water's edge. He dipped his hand in. It was cool and clear. It reflected 3 still figures above it. Leo twisted a blade of grass between his fingers. "Nathan, do you think the old man feels at peace now?" Nathan didn't hesitate. Not at peace, but peaceful enough to keep living. Ben added, "I think he deserves to be forgiven." Nathan shook his head. Forgiveness isn't ours to decide. But he admitted what he did. And he finally spoke her name. "That's enough. For this lifetime." Leo smiled softly. "We've walked through so many cemeteries, dug so many graves, but in the end, they all taught us the simplest truth." Nathan asked, "What truth?" Leo replied, "Never make the dead wait for the living to say their names right." Ben leaned his chin into his hand, half closing his eyes. "We dig graves, but sometimes what we're really searching for are the names no one ever said." Nathan nodded slowly. His eyes followed the flow of the stream, where sunlight glimmered on stone. There were no cries, no black tears, no wide open eyes frozen in silence. Only a small white grave, quiet, neat, peaceful, resting among the scent of wild trees and soft wind. 1 year later, Nathan returned to the village in mid-July. He didn't call, didn't announce himself. He came alone, with a bouquet of white jasmine, a box of incense, and a worn photograph. In the photo, 3 men stood in front of a simple grave. Sunlight touched their backs. The wind lifted their sleeves. The grave was still there, beside the stream. Grass had grown green and full around the headstone. Someone had placed fresh jasmine just a few days earlier. Nathan smiled. He knew the old man hadn't forgotten. He sat down beside the grave, lit the incense, and pressed it gently into the soil. Then he took the photo, laid it along the stone, and let the breeze carry across it one last time. The wind wasn't cold. It was soft through his hair, like a quiet reply. "I heard you. Thank you." And that is the story of a grave once hidden beneath the dirt, of a woman with no name. No title, no ritual, no mourning. People think that death is the end. But for those who never had their names spoken, not once, death isn't an ending. It's a pause, a waiting, a silence stretched across years, until one day, someone brave enough comes back, stands before a stone, and says, "I remember you, I know your name." And in that moment, peace begins. If you're still here with us, if you remember the name Lily, if your heart stirred, just for a moment, when someone finally said it aloud, then maybe, just maybe, that soul has truly been comforted. Thank you for listening, for staying with us through this journey. And if you believe no name should be forgotten, Leave us a comment below the video. We'll see you in the next story.